Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Danny Thompson. Some of you know me as Dr. Danny Roadkill, and that's awesome. But if this is your first time here, it's a little different than some of the videos I do. Not so much lately, I guess. But anyway, I want to make this video as this is not a video about what is better. So if you're looking for a which is better guitar video, this is not the one for you. What I want to do is compare two guitars that are very similar in style, but completely different in stature. My goal here isn't to shame anything, and it's not to glorify anything either. It's just about differences, you know, differences and similarities. So I know I'm curious about that. I figured maybe some other people would be curious about that. So why don't we find some of these things out together? Stick around. Along with Soundclips, I will also be examining specifics about the guitars, both structurally and cosmetically, and mainly just to show. Again, I'm not comparing what's better, what's not. Some things are obvious, some things not so much. I just think it's going to be curious because I know I'm curious. I assume other people are curious. So we're going to solve that little curiosity for everybody right now. So first, let's take a look at what we're dealing with. This is a 1997 Gibson J-200 1958 model that is made in Bozeman, Montana. At this point, technically, this is a vintage guitar. It's 28 years old. I think 25 is the vintage line. So this is a 28-year-old original Gibson J-200. It is a beautiful guitar by all accounts. And I'm fortunate enough to, a friend of mine loaned this to me to do this comparison video. And I got to tell you, this is beautiful. This is the first time I've ever held, well, not right now, but I've never had a I've never played a real Gibson J-200 until my friend loaned me this one. I will tell you this: it feels great. It smells wonderful. I mean, I'm not kidding. When I opened the case, you could smell. I mean, it smells the way it looks. You look at this guitar and you think, I bet that smells like a vintage guitar, and you would be right because it certainly does. It's a beautiful guitar, and I'm can't wait for you to get to know it better and find out some fun things about it. So the next guitar that we have is my 2025 Big Fat Fake Chinese copy of a Gibson J-200. Standard. I believe they say it's a standard. Personally, I think they were trying to copy Gibson's version of the Elvis Ebony J-200 that they offer right now for $5,499. The reason I think that is because Elvis's was a 1968 and it had what's called a closed mustache bridge. A lot of the older ones, like you see on the other one, are open. These are closed, and it has these very distinct inlays on them. Those were only done in the 60s, to my knowledge. I'm not a Gibson expert, but that's what I believe. I did make some modifications to this guitar since I first got it. And you know how I talked about how great the other guitar smelled? This one, not so much. I mean, it don't stink. You know, it doesn't have any odor at all right now. When I first opened the box, which I've got a video on the unboxing of this, I'll put a link in the description. It had a very polyurethane-ish kind of thing going on, but it does not smell like now. There's no smell at all. Anyway, the changes I made is I put real Grover tuners on it. I put a Gibson truss rod cover, changed this. I put a very expensive pick guard on it, and my luthier put a solid rosewood. He carved a solid rosewood saddle for this guitar. So those are other than the saddle. Nothing else is going to make this guitar tonally different. And some people would argue that changing the saddle really wouldn't change it that much. There's others that say it makes a huge difference whatever your side you're on, just take that in consideration when we're doing these sound clips. So let's get to it. Okay, so now that you've met the stars of this video, the guitars, we're going to play a little game. You're going to listen to 2 sets of audio clips that were recorded with each one of these guitars. Just acoustic guitar, they're short clips, but I gave them to a friend of mine, a guy named Joe Howard. He owns a recording studio here in town. He's been involved with production for several years. I didn't tell him which clips were what. I just said, take these clips. It's 4 clips total, 2 different songs, each being played by each guitar. It's not a whole song. They're like 30-second clips. And I told him to make these guitars sound as good as you can. So that includes any production things he wants to do. Compression, EQ, reverb, doesn't matter. I said, just make the guitars sound as good as you want. Just don't add any other instruments. So all you're hearing is the acoustic guitar. At the end of this video, I'll reveal which guitar was which to what clips. So then you'll know. Now, with that being said, throughout this video, I'm also going to have other examples of sound differences between these 2 guitars. I did not use anything scientific. I didn't take micro measurements of where to place a microphone and all that stuff. There are a couple of clips where I do use an Aston origin microphone. I just put it in front of the guitar. As you know, or you don't know, if you move a microphone a 1/4 of an inch closer, farther away, left or right, it's going to change the tone of that guitar. So keep that in mind when hearing these. The other ones, I'm actually using this little microphone right here. So it's picking up just what you're hearing between the voice and what's coming up from the guitar. Again, it's not scientific. It's just a difference in tones. But as we get to those clips, I'll explain what I'm using and how it is. I think this is going to be an interesting experiment. So stick around, let's have some fun. So let's start with the things that are exactly the same on both these guitars. First thing is they are both the same length. These are both 42 inches from top to bottom. They are both 12.25 or 12 1/4 inches across the top. They are both 17 inches across the lower bout. They both have a 12-inch neck radius. The headstocks are slightly different, not a lot. From wingtip to wingtip, it's about 3.5 inches. There's just a very slight variance, like hundredths of an inch. From nut to the center, They're both about 7 inches. Again, very slight differences. Aside from that, there are some major differences, some not so major differences. So let's talk about those. The nut on the Gibson is pretty much factory standard, 1.745. Now on my Chibson, I got a 1.7. Now I know that the Epiphone J-200s, I believe it is standard 1.695, so that is very close. And while I'm on the subject, I do think that I can't say that these guitars are made, the Chibsons are made where the Epiphones are, but man, I would be surprised if it's not. Back to our regularly scheduled program. The neck profile on the Gibson. Like I said, they both have a 12-inch radius. On the Gibson, at the first fret, it measures 0.88. That is very close to, if you look up the standard, I believe the standard is 0.87. On the 9th fret of the Gibson, it is 0.92. Now on the Chibson, at the first fret, I got a 0.82. So that means it's slightly thinner than the Gibson. But at the 9th fret, exactly the same. 0.92. Now I did notice that at the neck width at the 9th fret, on the Gibson it was 2.0, on the Chibson it was 2.054. So it's just slightly wider on the Chibson, which I found odd. Now the upper body has a thickness on the Gibson of 3.80. The Chibson, however, is 4.04. So the Chibson is actually slightly thicker on the upper body. Now the lower body, same situation. The Gibson measured at 4.7, where the Chibson was 4.9. So overall, the Chibson is actually a thicker guitar than the Gibson. Now keep in mind, this is a Gibson 1958 model. Maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. I also found it odd that the headstock had a slight difference in thickness. The thickness on the Gibson was 0.5, which is 0.58, so it's just a tad over a half an inch. The Chibson is a 0.66, so it's even slightly thicker than the Gibson headstock. Now here's some video I shot of the inside of each guitar. Both are very similar. I really personally couldn't tell you the difference in quality. I do see that on the Gibson that the scalloping and some of the bracing seems to be a little more detailed and definitely thinner in spots. There's, I don't know what you would call them, but these little points of divots where the braces go across that are definitely more detailed and I guess lighter or less bulky is how you would describe it. And I'm sure that that lends to the projection of the guitar and the resonance and the way it vibrates on top. Now the inside of the Chibson, you can definitely see it's newer. I mean, obviously it's not an old guitar. Although the bracing is very, very similar. Again, I don't know how you would tell the quality. I'm not a luthier, so I don't know that. But the work looks very well to me. It looks very clean. It does not look sloppy. There's a difference in the type of bracing, but I don't know how much that would lend to the tonal qualities of the projection and things of that nature. I also don't know about the neck joints. They look similar to me, but that doesn't really tell how they're connected. Someone with more knowledge could probably explain that. In these first clips, I'm using an Aston Origin microphone, going straight into GarageBand, absolutely flat EQ. The microphone placement is an approximation. So here's what that sounded like. Now these next clips are, I'm using this lavalier right here. It is a Hollyland Lark M2. microphone, and all you're getting is just the acoustic sound. Again, it's going to sound different when you're live in the room, but this is what you're getting from this microphone. And that's it. No EQ, nothing. Just the sound from this microphone. So there you have it. So what did you think? Do the differences matter? Does it matter that this guitar, probably brand new, cost about $4,000 more than this guitar? To some people it does, to some people it doesn't. What makes a guitar worth $4,000 more than another one? Did you like one more than the other? I mean, I found it pretty interesting. If you're looking for my thoughts, I will give them to you. I think they're both nice guitars. If this was a blind test and I could not tell which guitar was which, and I was going just off of feel, I mean, there's things I like about both. This guitar, the Gibson J-200, in my opinion, beautiful guitar, wonderfully made. It feels nice and solid. It's very airy. By the way, this guitar weighs 4.1 pounds. The Chibson weighs 5.1 pounds. So there's not a huge weight difference. I mentioned before that this guitar just smells wonderful. I mean, it smells like a vintage guitar. This one doesn't smell like anything, but So I'm getting off track here. If I was just for me, I could play either one. I will say this one, the Chibson, going by feel alone, actually felt more comfortable in my hands. Something about this particular neck shape, which it's funny because I play Fenders and I really like a big fat chunky neck, but this one is a bit wider, like not by much, but it's a tad wider, and it's not a whole lot thicker, but it's a little thicker. But it does have a different shape neck. The feel of the neck is different, and I found that this one just felt more, I was more at home on this guitar. Sound-wise, there's things I liked about both. I love the springy and chiminess of this one, but it still filled up the space well. This one had a very rich tone. The Gibson had a very rich tone to it that I could EQ into this one, but just in a natural room setting. Not that the Chibson lacked low end, but the Gibson just sort of breathed that richness to it. It's like talking to a baritone instead of talking to a tenor. So, yeah, I mean, again, this guitar new would have been $4,000 to $5,000 easy. This guitar brand new was under $400. Does that matter? To some people it does, to some people it don't. When you're buying a Gibson J-200, you're buying the stature of that guitar. You're buying a guitar that will absolutely appreciate and value, and you know, it says something. This is a statement. A Gibson J-200 is a statement. A Chibson J-200, that just means I like a cool guitar and I can't afford this one. But for me personally, would I shell out? Would it be worth me spending? The Elvis guitar that this is modeled after is a $5,500 guitar. There's no way I could afford a $5,500 guitar, nor do I think I would feel comfortable doing that. So yeah, this is a big fat fake Gibson J-200 that I made to look like an Elvis guitar. But that's fine. It does what I want it to do. It feels comfortable in my hands. It sounds great. But that's up to you. You know, we're not here to say one is better than the other. But I know what you're thinking already. I'm just here to say some of these cheap guitars are only bad because you think they are. Some of them actually are. Some of them are better. I think, to me, I proved that you can get a good sounding guitar and not have to spend $5,000 plus. So anyway, I'm curious to hear your comments and see what you think. Stick around for the big reveal, and I want to hear what you thought about that too. And as I said before, I love a healthy debate, and your opinion matters to you, but you're not going to change. Is anyone going to change your opinion about how you feel about something? If they are, it's going to have to be one heck of an argument. So just remember, if you want to state your opinion, please do so. I love a healthy debate. Just be nice. You know, use your words, not your anger. All right. Thanks again for watching, and let me know what you think.